Philip K. Dick was an American writer of existential science fiction who in the 1960s lived on a diet of amphetamines and dog food. Having won the Hugo Award from The Man in the High Castle in 1963, he was poised to reshape his entire genre, which is exactly what he did, with novels like The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and Ubik. These three masterpieces of his middle period are often seen as paragons of psychedelic literature, and this video will explore how he manages to capture the feeling of an acid trip. The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch follows Barney Mayerson, who creates layouts, or physical props, designed to guide those who take a hallucinogen called Can-D into their ideal realities. Meanwhile, an intergalactic drug dealer called Palmer Eldritch settles on the moon with an even more potent drug called Choosy, which is not only more addictive, but doesn't require guidance to plunge its users into alternate realities. Mayerson takes the drug and tries to control his hallucination, only to find himself in Eldritch's robotic hands. Though dealing with psychedelic trips, The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch was written before Dick actually experienced one. He suffered from schizophrenia and claimed the novel was inspired by an actual mystical experience, lasting about a month, in which he saw the face of evil hovering over the landscape. A true trip before he had seen any LSD, much less taken any. He also researched the effects of the drug, and realizing that its effects had a lot in common with his mental health conditions, wove them into the novel. The key theme of Palmer Eldritch and his other masterpieces of the 1960s is paranoia. Its rapid-fire chain of events sweeps the reader into the same haze of stimuli as the characters, and it can be difficult to find your bearing. Though sometimes described as messier than Dick's other novels, I think this only adds to the atmosphere. China Mieville describes it as one of the masterpieces of weird fiction, and having left him hollow and beaten. The exhaustion is akin to the after effects of a drug binge. There's also the lingering suggestion that just like Barney Mayerson, your world is also controlled by a malevolent being. Though better known for having inspired the gritty neo-noir Blade Runner, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is actually a kaleidoscopic look into the future. Rick Deckard is a hunter of androids on a dying Earth. His journey begins with an argument with his wife about how best to control their emotions with an uncanny machine. Though tasked with tracking down 6 renegade androids, his real pursuit is existential fulfillment. He owns an electric sheep, for the prevalence of artificial humans and alternate realities has left the remaining people craving a feeling of reality. He also engages in a dystopian religion called Mercerism, which involves using empathy boxes to link users simultaneously to a virtual reality of collective suffering. The purpose of these joint hallucinations is to control their connectedness, and they are centered on a martyr-like character, Wilbur Mercer, who eternally climbs up a hill while being pelted with crashing stones. The novel was written at a time when thinkers like Timothy Leary were encouraging their readers to use LSD to attain higher degrees of consciousness. The drug was associated with developing a greater awareness of the universe. Philip K. Dick uses Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep to both support and criticize this idea. The renegade androids, though artificial, develop an awareness of their own existence through the use of drugs, which is what inspires them to cling on to life, but is the only life they'll ever have. At the same time, the discovery that experiencing the suffering of Mercer isn't actually a spiritual experience, but merely a simulation, is a major source of crisis in the book. Here, Philip K. Dick seems to imply that acid trips, though leading to a more intense reality, is simulated nonetheless. He may have been in two minds, at the time of writing the book, whether the psychedelic experience was part of a spiritual journey, or merely the clouding of judgment. Ubik is the only work of Philip K. Dick to be included on Time's 100 Greatest Novels, and is often considered his masterpiece. It may also be his most theological, dealing with questions of God and the afterlife. It follows Joe Chip, who works for a company which employs people with telepathic abilities, as well as precogs, who have the power to dampen their abilities and therefore protect the privacy of their clients. His boss is Glenn Runsiter, who runs the organization with the assistance of his undead wife. She is kept in a state of cryonic suspension called half-life, which allows her limited consciousness and contact with the living world. The problems begin when her mind is invaded by a mysterious being called Jory Miller. Matters are then complicated when Runciter assembles 11 of his best employees, including a woman who can undo the past, and a bomb goes off, which appears to kill only Runciter. Strange events, like time going in the wrong direction, leads to the apparent survivors discovering that the bomb actually killed them, and they were the ones placed in half-life. The deterioration of their simulated reality is caused by Jory Miller, who feeds on them to sustain his own existence, and they must search for cans of a mysterious product called Ubik, which when sprayed on themselves, keeps their reality stable. Philip K. Dick's former wife, Tessa Busby, said of the novel that Ubik is a metaphor for God. The spray can is only a form that Ubik takes to make it easy for people to understand and use it. It is not the substance inside the can that helps them, but rather their faith in the promise that it will help them. Ubik is perhaps Dick's best attempt to capture the paranoid consequences of the psychedelic experience, as well as its disorientating effects. The novel concludes with Glenn Runciter, who has been communicating with his undead employees, discovering his own reality is beginning to deteriorate, which calls into question who is really alive and who is dead. The world of Ubik is already such a mind-bending dystopia that it's difficult to say. Tessa went on to remark that there is no real answer. The ending is meant to tell you that we can't be sure of anything in the world that we call reality. It is possible that they are all dead, and the half-life world can affect the full-life world. It is also possible that they are all alive and dreaming. Philip K. Dick continued to experiment with themes of paranoia and disorientation in other works like Flow My Tears, The Policeman Said, and A Scanner Darkly. He had an eventful life, with multiple suicide attempts, bombs being planted in his home, and 6 marriages, dying on March 2nd, 1982, aged 53. Or did he?